Alright, so just today, I made it to Diamond 1 using the worst Sky Striker deck list you've ever seen in your life. So let's look at it. Bam! I know what you're thinking already. Why are you on one Raye? And the answer is math plus chicken game. But I think the theory of this deck is pretty obvious, and the answer is draw a card. But I'm just going to go over the cards in the deck list, and I'm going to explain the theory and the idea of the math behind it in terms of why we're playing names and which names we're playing, the purposes, the goals behind them, stuff like that real quick. But I just want to run through the deck list because all of the cards are fairly simple. Even running. Oh, gosh, what a stupid deck list. So we're running one Raye, one Rose, 3 Upstart, Rhoda, Terraforming, Into the Void, Engage, Afterburners, Chicken Game, 1 Area 0, 2 Multi-Roll. We got 3 enemy controllers, 2 Called by the Grave, 3 Widow Anchor, a Shark Cannon, 3 Droplet, 3 Linkage, 3 Infinite Impermanence, 3 Solemn Judgment. So, we're going to go through. I'm going to start the explanation with the obvious one. We're playing 9 cards that draw 1 card. So we have Upstart Goblin, Chicken Game, and Into the Void. We're playing these. We want Spells Engrave. Why? Striker cards like 3 Spells Engrave. That's the whole thing. So the ideal first turn would be you draw like 3 draw 1s and engage. And from that position, you get everything you want, and it's very nice, obviously. So that's the purpose of that's 9 slots on our deck. We're on Area 0. I normally don't love Area 0 in Striker. However, we don't want to let our opponent draw a card for free. So this allows Terraforming to either be another copy of Upstart Goblin, well, Chicken Game specifically, sorry. I should speak more precisely. So Terraforming is either an extra copy of Chicken Game, or it can out a Chicken Game on our side of the field, which is both of which are very good. It depends on what we need, and that will depend on what we go for with Terraforming. Besides that, we're not playing any hand traps. We want to be able to set our whole hand because we're playing Into the Void, because you discard your hand during the end phase. Importantly, for Into the Void and Shizuku, you can discard your hand to Into the Void before doing the Shizuku search. So you don't have to worry about having to discard the card you search. So like you'll be able to discard your hand and then search for Engage, which is very nice. Other than that, let's talk through the Striker cards, other than just the draw 1 cards now. So now we have why we're not playing Ashe, Maxi, Valor, anything like that, Gamma, because the idea is basically we are going to put turbo spells into Graveyard. So let's talk about the Sky Striker cards in the main deck. So we have 1 Raye. You obviously need Raye. Raye's really good. This is what I ended on, and I changed the numbers because I wanted to draw a specific amount of interaction. And you do need to play Raye. Raye's really good. Called by the Grave isn't real. That's all I have to say on that. Called by the Grave just isn't real. That's it. They simply will not draw it. You play a Rose. Rose is actually really good against Sprite in terms of like helping clear boards and stuff, because like you can, Elf only has 1400 attack, which means you can attack over with Hayate, send Rose, summon Rose. Even if they have red on the field, that negates effects, not activation, so it can't activate during the damage step. Which can give you access to your to monster effects if you need them. So that's very good for you, obviously. And it gives you another 1500 attack monsters. Sprite monsters are generally pretty small. Rose is pretty good, and also allows linkage OTKs. Reinforcements of the Army is another copy of Raye or Rose. So this is essentially just Raye, usually. Sometimes you search like Rose because you're going to droplet and destroy a monster in the EMZ with like Afterburners or something, which will summon Rose back, which lets you take care of more stuff. Rose can be pretty important. I would not cut Rose. Moving on, we have Engage. This searches any of your striker cards, and if you have 3 spells in graveyard, you draw a card. This is the reason. This is a huge reason we want 3 spells in grave. The other one is Widow Anchor, and Afterburners, of course. So ideally, you'll have like 3 draw ones and Engage. Fantastic. Preferably also Called by the Grave, but that's neither here nor there. So then, that's Engage. Afterburners, you're going to target a card, destroy it, and then a monster card face up. And if you do, if you destroy it, and at the point of resolution, have 3 or more spells in graveyard, you can pop a spell or trap. This is the only reason you have any chance of winning against pure Runic. But if you value your time and sanity, I would usually advise just surrendering against them, because either you're going to be like, oh, I've won, or you're going to be like, oh gosh, this is a slog. And if it's a slog, you're maybe a 30 to 50% chance of winning. It depends. But you have to play for the last few turns, and it's very tedious. Shocking, I know. Area 0. Like I said before, this goes over chicken game, so your opponent doesn't get a free card, and also you can use it to switch out a card you don't want to try to look for a striker card. It comes up also if you have Raye, you can Area 0 target Raye effect, and that way you don't lose a card, because it doesn't have to send a card for you to add a card from your deck to your hand. So you'll just check the top 3 of your deck for any Sky Striker card, and all of our Sky Striker cards are good. Multi-roll. I'm playing 2 because sometimes the first one gets destroyed, and not needing to Kagari for a multi-roll is nice. I was on 3, but I wanted to make room for more interaction, and we'll talk about the generic interaction in a moment. Widow Anchor. This is effect negation, and it also, if we have 3 or more spells in graveyard, can steal your opponent's monsters. So this is our strongest form of interruption, and it's very... actually, it's not the strongest form of interruption we have. But this is like very good against Sprite in particular, because it takes them off of the monster that they normal summon, so they have to have drawn an extender or be Sprite Runic. I'm not gonna lie, Sprite Runic does what this deck wants to do, which is play the long game, and it does it way better than you do. So you kind of have to go first hand or good hand against Sprite Runic. Just Runic cards gives them too many special summon extenders, which is just very unfortunate for you. And it's usually going to be too much for you to be able to beat. We have Shark Cannon. People still play Math Mech, and Shark Cannon beats Super Factorial, essentially. There are other decks it's good against. It can also, it's still good against Sprite too. You can use this to blank an Elf activation, or if they're trying to Scythe Lock you, this is another one of like the 50 cards you have to stop the Scythe Lock. I've only ever seen the Live Twins do that, and I don't see people normally ending on Carrot, so usually if you draw Widow Anchor, Shark Cannon, Droplets, Impermanence, or Called by the Grave, if you draw any of those cards, you're usually safe from being Scythe Locked. Although, depending on the hand, you don't even really care about being Scythe Locked. One thing about this deck is if it draws well, you generally don't need to special summon, like, at all. Just because you're using your powerful spells, rather than summoning monsters. But obviously that's very hand-specific. Shark Cannon can also be used, like, if your opponent summons a Barone and it goes to graveyard, you can steal that from the graveyard, and its effects will not be negated. Also, this is generally how you're going to get to access Code Talker. by stealing their stuff, essentially. Linkage. We play this. This sends a card you control to special summon a Sky Striker Ace Link monster. Because there are only Sky Striker Ace monsters that are Links in the extra deck. You can only summon the Link ones, and that is because Zeke has to be Link summoned. All of the Link 2s that'll ever come out for Sky Striker are going to have this must be Link summon on them, because Raye would be able to cheat them out otherwise, and Linkage would be able to cheat them out otherwise. This does lock you into Sky Striker Ace monsters from your extra deck. So you're not going to be able to like do access code after this goes. Sometimes you can use this to push through damage, so like you can make access code punch for 53, then linkage the access code away for like a Kagari, get back engage or something, and then hit them for game for another like 3k, depending on how many spells you have in game. Engrave. That has come up. That's not an infrequent way of being able to kill your opponent, but usually you're not making access code. Alright, then we're going to talk. I don't think I described multi-roll very well. So for multi-roll, at the end of the turn, you get to set as many Sky Striker cards as you activated while it was face up on the field. But the ones you set all have to have different names. So this is just a very powerful long-term grind game. And so this is your long-term win condition. Also, if you're trying to break a board, activating multi-roll and activating its other effect lets you target another card you control, and then you send that card to the graveyard. By the way, it doesn't actually have to send it successfully in order for your opponent to not be able to respond to your spell card activations for the rest of the turn. So this just makes it so that every single card in your deck they can't respond to or negate. So if they have Ash, you don't have to worry about Ash. You'll be able to engage, and they can't Ash it. Also, sometimes that'll come up for like being able to afterburners and hit a back row that otherwise would be very problematic for you. Multi-roll is a very strong tool for board breaking. Sometimes it depends, and it's pretty much your win condition in the long game. Okay. So for our generics, we are running enemy controller for the following reason. Widow Anchors are easiest to search interruption, and it's not infrequent that you'll have 2 Widow Anchor. So the idea is stealing another monster tends to be very good, especially against Sprite in particular. So the idea is that you're getting rid of the monster that they summon, so that they don't have a level 2 on the field, rather than just negating the effect. And also, if you have a second Widow Anchor or other Sky Striker spells, you can activate them by activating enemy controller. This is the most recent addition. I added it because I wanted to be able to more consistently draw more interruption. I haven't disliked it. It even came up against the deck that was trying to hit me directly for game, because I hadn't drawn a copy of Raye that game, and they were going second like OTK deck. Even though they didn't make the 2/8s and drew Denko Seka, but, you know, sometimes you just don't draw well, I guess. An econ even there was essentially it negating an attack was actually pretty relevant. But usually the idea is, like my first thought with all of my cards is, how does this do against Sprite? Because that's very popular right now, obviously. I thought it was very funny. It did fine. This is by far the most questionable card, and I only had it for like maybe the last 10-ish duels or something, and it was because I had too many duels where I was drawing too many names, which once again I'll talk about specifically why I have ratios the way I do in a moment. We're playing 3 Forbidden Droplet. This allows you to get through boards that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. It turns like dead cards into monster negates. Good card. droplets is the main reason I'd want to fit in 2 more Raye. But this deck list feels very cramped. It's very hard to like figure out where you want to make room. Infinite Impermanence, you can set it. Doesn't conflict with Into the Void. It's a hand trap. It's good. Sometimes it'll end your opponent's turn. And then of course you have Solemn Judgment. I say of course, and I mean, this keeps winning me games even when I go second. It's super freaking weird. Like, I'll be able to break the board, and then I'll be like, bam, Solemn Judgment, what they want to do when they go. It's so weird. This should not be good. But like, our goal for this deck is to be able to go first and go first well. And Judgment really helps with that. And Judgment frequently comes up going second. I've had it where I've been able to Judgment an access code I wouldn't be able to target otherwise. Judgment and Forbidden Droplet are essentially our anti-cheese cards. So if we're like, oh, that's an untargetable Bungus, Judgment it, they can't summon it, or Droplet it, because we can actually get it with Droplet. So this Droplet's usually the out to A for max if we don't have a Judgment set. So these are 2 cards that out stupid garbage. Importantly, because the card isn't summoned, like Judgment will out something made with IP, because it hasn't been summoned yet. Very nice. But the idea behind the math for the reason why we're playing 1 Raye, 1 Rose, and we're not playing drones, is because I specifically want 6 copies of Raye. So we have Raye herself, you have Rose, more or less Raye, Rhoda, Raye, and 3 linkage, more or less Raye. So what's important about linkage, for example, in particular, is we want a specific number of outs for chicken game, so our opponent doesn't get to draw a card. I have not yet had a game where my opponent gets to draw off of my chicken game. Linkage sends chicken game. The field spell gets rid of chicken game. Multi-roll gets rid of chicken game. So we need to draw any one of those things to out chicken game. And obviously, engage can be any of those things as per needed. The other thing is Area 0 is sometimes Raye if you also have multi-roll. Sometimes it's Raye with making Engage immune to Ash, which is very nice. So besides that, the idea is essentially with all the draw 1 cards, this deck is essentially a 31 card deck, because 9 of our cards say draw until you don't draw a card that says draw 1. So effectively, in that sense, it's a quote-unquote 31 card deck. And so we just need a copy of Raye. So we're playing 6 with the idea that about 1 in 5 cards are Raye, and we have 2 extras and Engage. But Engage is extra copies of like all of the Sky Striker cards, which is very nice. I found cutting down on Raye, drones, and stuff helped me stop drawing those things. So that's why we're doing that, and then everything else is essentially like multi-rolls are long-term game plan. Area 0 is ideally to help find Engage or Widow Anchor in particular. And then, of course, Afterburners is just really good for interaction when your opponent has back row. You could consider cutting it, but it's just so good. But obviously, it's just not good going first. And then the idea is that we're playing a certain amount of interaction. So if we look, we have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 cards that interact with our opponent. And I would consider 18, because Called by the Grave and Shark Cannon do interact, but those interact with less decks than the rest of them. So the idea is that we have like 18 cards. The idea is that like 2 to 3 cards in your hand are going to be ways to interact with your opponent. You'll have like a copy of Raye, and like ideally a bunch of draw 1 cards and Engage in the ideal setting, but the idea is like even if you don't draw the draw 1 cards, you're probably going to have like a copy of Raye and 2 to 3 interactions with your opponent. if you don't get to draw 1 cards, that can be very problematic in terms of like Widow Anchor without stealing the monster can frequently not be enough. And that obviously also will make like econ pretty bad. But sometimes it can just be worth it to like econ your Raye away to take whatever they did. But obviously that's going to depend. But that's basically the basic concept of the deck, and for why it's built the way it is, why I cut down Raye. I used to have 2 Raye. Before I added the econs, I had... the deck looked like this. So if you don't like the econs, you could do it like this. I think Book of Moon would be a consideration, because that's better against... the runic variant in particular. But econ helps against pure runic in the sense it lets you push through damage in when you normally wouldn't be able to. Because you can econ the monster they summon to attack position, which is very funny. I frequently have it where it's just very hard to get damage through onto a runic player. So enemy controller helping with that can hypothetically help you squeeze out wins you wouldn't be able to otherwise. Okay. But that's the idea, is that you're trying to come up with basic interaction. Boards aren't usually too crazy combo heavy. You can generally, plenty of hands can play through Scythe, either because you have enough strong pieces of interaction that don't care about you being able to summon from the extra deck, that you'll be fine, or because you just straight up have drawn one of your like 10 outs in your opening hand. I've only seen the Live Twin variant do the Scythe block, and they can't have Elf point to everything that needs to resolve. So, yeah, because they need 3 cards. They need, I think it's Kiss a Kill. Nope. Never mind. Yeah, so they need Kiss a Kill. They need Kiss a Kill to resolve so that they can special summon Leela, and they need Leela to resolve to be able to target and pop Scythe, and they need Scythe's on-field effect to resolve. And if any of those don't resolve, you aren't Scythe locked. So Elf only has 2 arrows because it's a Link 2. That was foolish. So they can't point to all 3 of those cards. So if you have Imphip, if you have Widow Anchor, if you have Droplet, Shark Cannon, and Call by the Grave, those all out that board state. But besides that, go over the extra deck real quick. We have Kagari. It's at 2, we play 2, insane card. Shizuku, it's at 3, we play 3, insane card. Hayate, it's at 3, we play 3, very good card. Kaina, we're playing 3. If you want to cut a card from the extra deck, I would cut a Kaina. The only thing is, Kaina allows you to like linkage into Kaina while using, say, Area 0. To look for engage, which allows you to like high roll into engage, which is generally something I like doing if I'm capable of it. Otherwise, like Area 0 on Raye, make Kaina because you summon the monster before Area 0 finishes resolving, which means if you high roll into engage, you can activate engage and then go into Kagari. The other thing is, a lot of people will just negate Kaina for no reason. I have won a lot of games because my opponents negate Kaina because they think it's worth negating. I don't understand why. I like playing 3 Kaina, it comes up. Having different names for linkage can be important. in order to like do the OTK when like weird things have happened during the turn, or alternatively important when they have like 5,000 life points and you have like already Kagari'd or something, where there's just edge circumstances where just having a third Kaina can be useful. But I would definitely play 2, and then the third one's probably cuttable if you want to play like Nin Gearsu to out stupid garbage instead of having to hard draw Droplet to out Avermax. Okay. Phoenix. I haven't made Phoenix in a while, but it's a generic 2. It outs dumb back row sometimes. I haven't had this come up in 10 billion years. Zeke is a Sky Striker too. If you use linkage and you need to get rid of your opponent's monster, here's Zeke. Zeke also banishes a monster from the field. I was on 2 Zeke for a while, but second Zeke wasn't coming up. Unicorn's a generic 3 to make access code 5300 attack. This has come up more than Phoenix, and not to remove cards from the field. It has been an attack buff to access code talker. Besides that, there's access code. This is a 5300 attack monster. Sometimes its pops are also relevant. Usually they're relevant. It depends though. But that's the general rundown of the deck. The only specific thing I'd say if you're new to the deck is if you think your opponent has like infinite impermanence or something, and you want to go to, and you're like going to combat with Hayate, and you're like, oh, I could send Engage to search something, but you're pretty sure that they have infinite impermanence or another monster negate. What I found, if they don't negate Hayate itself, is sending the card you want to search with Engage is frequently better, because you can force them to need to like negate Kagari because you're trying to grab Afterburners, which will answer the imperm anyways, or you're going to get the Widow Anchor because that's the interruption you need for the next turn, which just allows you to Shizuku search Engage if it's not already in Graveyard. That's something I see people do, where they'll put Engage in Graveyard when it's pretty clear the opponent has some sort of effect negation. Because it just means your Shizuku search is going to be worse, unless you need like a Widow Anchor at the end of your turn to set up more effect negation, in which case, less likely to matter. But yeah, that's a basic overview of this deck. And why I'm playing the ratios I'm trying to play at, the goals in terms of the weird numbers with everything. The one thing I'd say is it really feels like you should fit at least a second Raye in. This feels so wrong. I don't even know what I probably cut linkage. But yeah. Generally the problem with the deck is if you draw too many copies of Raye in effect, like you don't have any interaction and it feels bad. And you're like, oh, I'm just gonna die because I can't do anything. Ideally you go first and you draw Judgment plus whatever. Another big reason I play Judgment is because every single one of my opponents draws Harpy's Feather Duster, and Judgment says I don't lose the game on the spot. Very cool. I like not losing the game on the spot. That's that. Judgment's really good against Sprite, as long as it's not Sprite Runic. Don't really have too much else I can think of off the top of my head. I really enjoy Striker. I was surprised how well it did, even after Sprite came out. I was worried about Sprite, because I know how strong Sprite is. But yeah, aside from Runic Sprite in particular is killer, because Runic Sprite is another deck that just grinds out advantage, and Runic Sprite does that better than this deck does. Usually what needs to happen for you is, like if you go second, either you need to have gone first and have like an insane opening hand against them, or they need to have like a really bad opening hand, or something along those lines. And then you can sort of grind them out from there. Or you go second and you have like a big push turn where you're able to like break their board and then take over the game from there. Usually Afterburners is involved. Yeah, this deck list aims to go first, if that wasn't clear from Judgments. I've enjoyed playing it. I'm rambling now. Hope you enjoyed, even though this was very unstructured. I hope I made it clear how the deck works. I don't know if in the current format, there's no way this is the best way to play Striker. I refuse to believe that. But this felt surprisingly good, is what I will say about this deck list. It felt surprisingly competent for how like weird and dumb it looks. I like messing around with Sky Striker. And this is what I ended on this season. Alright, I'm going to shut up now.